I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw a drink or flip a table. I just stood there holding my son's backpack strap in my hand and realized that some words don't just hurt you. They change the shape of the room forever. That was the second something in me snapped, and it didn't make a sound. If you've ever had family look straight through you like you don't matter, if you've ever watched someone you love get cut down, while everyone else pretended it was a joke, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. Because what happened after that night didn't stay in that house. And it didn't end quietly. My name is Erin Walsh. I'm 35, a single mom. According to my family, the cautionary tale, the one you whisper about when the kids aren't supposed to hear. Last Saturday was my father's birthday, one of those forced gatherings in a quiet suburb where the lawns are too green and the smiles are too tight. White folding tables, store-bought cake. The dishwasher already humming even though dinner wasn't done yet. I almost didn't go. But my son Caleb wanted to. He's 10, old enough to notice who sits next to who, old enough to feel it when the air shifts. So we went. My younger brother Mason was already there when we arrived. New watch, crisp shirt, that confident lean against the counter like he owned the room and everyone in it. His wife Tiffany hovered close, phone in hand, recording little clips for her stories. Perfect angles, perfect life. Caleb squeezed my sleeve when we walked in. Just once. Not scared, just checking. I nodded. We were fine. We weren't. Dinner went on too long. The kind of small talk that scrapes your nerves raw. Mason bragging about expansion plans. Tiffany laughing too loud. My mother refilling wine glasses like it was her job. Then Mason raised his glass. Not for a toast, for attention. He tilted his head toward Caleb and smiled. Not warm, sharp. "Hey, buddy," he said. "You know your mom's kind of famous around here, right?" The table went quiet. Caleb looked up at him confused. Curious, still open. Mason took a sip, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "She's the family example," he went on. "You know, what not to do. Wrong choices, wrong timing, wrong life." Someone laughed. A short one, nervous. Too late. Tiffany leaned in, eyes flicking to her phone screen. "We all make mistakes," she said lightly. "Some people just make them permanent." Caleb's face drained so fast it scared me. I felt his fingers curl into my sleeve. Hard. I said nothing. Mason wasn't done. "Don't worry," he added, shrugging. "At least you'll have a good story one day. Overcoming all this." He gestured vaguely. At me. At my life. At my son. That was the moment. Caleb pulled his hand away from me like my skin burned. He stood up so fast his chair screeched across the tile. His eyes were glassy. Not crying yet, trying not to. "I'm going outside," he said. His voice cracked on the last word. No one stopped him. My mother sighed like this was inconvenient. "He's sensitive," she murmured. "You know how kids are." Mason chuckled. "Runs in the family." That was the second something in me snapped. Still, I didn't raise my voice. I walked past the table, past my brother, past his wife, past my parents pretending their plates were suddenly fascinating. My footsteps sounded too loud in the quiet house. The back door slammed harder than I meant it to. Caleb was crouched by the fence, his backpack half open, shoulders shaking, not sobbing, holding it in. That kind of crying is worse, the kind that hurts later. I knelt in front of him, lowered my voice. "Hey," I said, "look at me." He didn't at first. "They think I'm like you," he whispered. "Like a problem." I swallowed. "No," I said. One word, flat, certain. "They're wrong." He shook his head. "Uncle Mason said I don't care what he said." That stopped him. I took his face in my hands, felt the heat there, the tension. "You are not a lesson," I said. "You are not a warning. You are not a mistake. You are the best thing that ever happened to me." His breath hitched. He finally cried then. "Quiet." Pressed into my shoulder. Behind us, the porch light flicked on. No one came out. Of course they didn't. We left 10 minutes later. No goodbyes, no explanations. I didn't owe them one. The car ride home was dark and silent, except for the click of the turn signal and Caleb's breathing slowly evening out in the back seat. Streetlights passed like witnesses who wouldn't testify. Halfway home, he spoke again. "Mom." "Yeah. Why do they hate you?" I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. "They don't hate me," I said. "They just don't know me." That was the lie I'd been telling myself for years. When we got home, I sent Caleb to shower. He moved slowly. Like the house felt different now. I stood in the kitchen alone. The clock blinked 9:17. The dishwasher I'd started earlier kicked on with a low mechanical growl, water rushing, plates rattling, a sound that used to mean normal. I leaned against the counter and let the rage settle, cold, focused, heavy. Then I opened my laptop, 2 passwords, 1 hidden folder. I hadn't touched it in almost 4 years. The screen glowed in the dark kitchen. Documents stacked neatly. Clean, precise, everything Mason never was. Ownership records, escrow confirmations, signatures in blue ink. Proof. I stared at the date on the first file. Almost exactly 4 years ago. The night Mason showed up at my door, drunk and desperate, begging for help, he swore he'd never need. I closed my eyes. From down the hall, I heard the shower turn off, then footsteps, then Caleb's door closing softly. I looked back at the screen. Tonight my son learned how cruel words could be. Tomorrow my brother was going to learn something else. I shut the laptop, stood there listening to the dishwasher hum and the house breathe. And I made myself a promise I should have made years ago. No one was ever going to make my child feel small again, not even family. I didn't open the folder right away. I made Caleb hot chocolate, extra cocoa, too much sugar. I let him ramble about a science quiz like nothing had happened. I nodded at the right places, smiled when he smiled, waited until his bedroom door clicked shut and the light underneath faded. Only then did I sit at the kitchen table. The house was quiet in that artificial way, appliances whispering pipes ticking the low hum of the refrigerator, filling the spaces where words used to live. I slid my laptop closer. The edge of the table dug into my forearms. 2 passwords. 1 breath. The folder bloomed open. Northlake Holdings, LLC. I hadn't looked at those files in years, but I didn't need to read them. I knew the order by heart. Formation documents, escrow agreements, capitalization tables frozen in time like insects in amber. This wasn't anger money. This was patience money. 4 years earlier, Mason hadn't been the man with the watch and the smile. He'd been standing on my porch at 2:11 a.m., rain soaking through his jacket eyes, bloodshot hands shaking so badly he dropped his phone twice before managing to call me. He smelled like panic, not alcohol. Panic. I remember because it surprised me. He'd always been the golden one, the loud one, the one my parents bragged about to strangers in grocery store lines, the one who never needed help until he did. His company was called Apex Grid Systems back then. Mid-size, flashy, a logistics platform for regional distributors. The kind of business people loved to hype but didn't bother to understand. Mason was great at selling the dream. He was terrible at running the machine. I knew the cracks before anyone else did. Not because he told me, but because I read filings for a living. I saw the delayed vendor payments. The lawsuits quietly settled before they hit the news, the revolving door of CFOs who lasted less than a year. When he finally told the truth, it came out sideways, not a confession, a demand dressed as desperation. They're circling, he'd said, pacing my living room, dripping rain onto the rug I couldn't afford to replace. 1 bad quarter and the lenders pull everything. I just need time. Time costs money. He didn't ask our parents. He couldn't risk the image. He came to me because I was invisible, because no one watched my moves, because I was the family failure who somehow still had a credit score north of reality. I asked one question. How much? He hesitated, then said it fast, like ripping off a bandage. 8, maybe 9 million. I laughed, not because it was funny, because it was absurd. I didn't tell him yes that night. I didn't tell him no. I told him to leave and get sober and come back in the morning with numbers, not excuses. He did. I spent the next 3 weeks doing nothing else. I called favors I'd earned quietly. I read contracts until my eyes burned. I built a structure Mason would never understand and could never touch. Northlake Holdings wasn't a favor. It was a firewall. The money didn't come from one place. It never should. It came from years of restraint. From not upgrading my car when I could. From buying silence instead of applause. From a settlement I never talked about and investments I never bragged over. When the funds moved, they moved clean. 7 wires, 4 days. 1 escrow agent who didn't ask questions. The terms were simple, brutal, fair, control, not visibility. Mason signed everything without reading past the headers. He was too busy surviving to worry about ownership. Too busy telling himself this was temporary. The day the final wire cleared, Apex Grid Systems belonged to Northlake Holdings. To me, quietly. I didn't put my name on the website. I didn't take a board seat. I didn't show up to meetings. I installed a professional Grant Keller and gave him instructions so narrow they could fit through a keyhole. Run the company, fix the leaks, send me the truth, and never say my name. Mason rebounded fast, faster than he deserved. He paid off the worst debts, fired the wrong people, took credit for all of it. The company rebranded. New logo, new contracts, new narrative, self-made comeback, visionary leadership, genius CEO beats the odds. I watched it all from a distance, from my kitchen table, from my car and school pickup lines, from a life that didn't change on the outside. I let him have the spotlight for 3 reasons. First, my parents. They needed to believe their son was exceptional. I didn't have the heart to shatter that illusion. Not then. Second, Caleb. He was 6 at the time. He needed stability. An uncle he could look up to, a family that didn't feel like a minefield. Third, the employees. Hundreds of them. People who did nothing wrong except trust the wrong man. They didn't deserve collapse because of ego. So I stayed quiet. Silence is a powerful leash if the person on the other end understands it. Mason didn't. Success didn't humble him, it sharpened him. The better the numbers got, the worse his mouth became. The jokes turned meaner. The comments about my life got louder. The digs more specific, living off child support, wasted potential. Some people just aren't built for more. I absorbed it, for years, because the leash was there, because I thought it was enough. Tonight proved me wrong. I scrolled to the most recent report, dated 3 weeks ago. Grant had been careful with his wording, but I could read between the lines. Aggressive spending, risky leverage, old habits sniffing the air. Mason was getting sloppy again, and now he'd crossed the one line I'd drawn in ink, not pencil. I closed the folder and leaned back in my chair. The light from the screen cast hard shadows on the cabinets. I looked older like that, sharper, less forgiving. From the hallway came the soft sound of Caleb turning over in his sleep. A small noise, ordinary. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I didn't scroll, I didn't hesitate. I tapped one contact. Grant answered on the second ring. "I was wondering when you'd call," he said. My voice was calm, too calm. "Call the meeting," I told him. "Emergency, full attendance." A pause, not surprised, just resigned. Tomorrow morning. In person. Yes. Another beat. "They won't see it coming," he said. I thought of Mason's smile at the table, the way he'd looked at my son. "They never do," I replied. I ended the call and sat there in the dim kitchen, hands folded, pulse steady. For years I'd carried the knife by the handle. Tonight I turned it around, and tomorrow I was done pretending I didn't know how to use it. The alarm went off at 6:00 a.m., not the gentle kind. The sharp, insistent buzz that doesn't ask if you're ready. It tells you time is up. I shut it off before it could ring a second time. The house was still dark, pre-dawn quiet, that thin hour where the world hasn't decided what it's going to be yet. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, listening to Caleb's steady breathing down the hall. No dreams, no nerves, just clarity. I moved through the kitchen without turning on the overhead light. Coffee first, black, strong. The machine clicked, hissed, then settled into a low, mechanical growl. I leaned against the counter and waited, arms crossed, feeling the cold tile through my bare feet. At 6:12, I heard Caleb's door open. He stood there in the hallway, hair sticking up, pajama shirt, twisted sideways, blinking. "Is it a school day?" he asked. "No," I said. That got his attention. I poured the coffee, let the silence stretch just long enough. "Get dressed," I added. "Something comfortable. We're going out." He frowned but nodded. "No questions." He'd learned when my voice went flat like that, answers came later. By 6:45, he was at the table eating toast shoulders, hunched eyes tracking my movements like he didn't quite trust the ground yet. I slid a folded permission slip across the table. "What's this?" he asked. "Just in case," I said. "If anyone asks." He signed it without reading. I pulled on my jacket. Not a dress coat, not armor, just something clean and dark, the kind of outfit people don't remember until it's too late. We left the house at 7:10. The drive was quiet, not awkward, intentional. Downtown came into view slowly, glass and steel catching the early light, buildings stacked like intentions. Apex Grid's headquarters sat 3 blocks off the main stretch, understated but solid. Gray stone, tinted windows, no sign flashing its ego. Caleb shifted in his seat as we pulled into the underground garage. "This is Uncle Mason's building," he said. "Yes." He swallowed. I parked in a visitor spot, turned off the engine. For a second, neither of us moved. The hum of distant traffic echoed through the concrete. "You don't have to say anything in there," I told him. "You don't have to do anything. You just stay with me." He nodded. Tight. We took the elevator up. The doors closed with a soft thud. Numbers climbed. 12, 13, 14. At 17, the elevator stopped. The lobby was already awake. Low voices, the scent of cologne and fresh paper, shoes clicking on polished floors. A receptionist I vaguely recognized looked up, then froze when she saw us. Her smile flickered, professional instinct wrestling with surprise. "Ms. Walsh," she said carefully. "Mr. Keller said to expect you." She glanced at Caleb, then back at me. "Right this way." Caleb's steps slowed as we walked past framed articles on the wall. Mason's face appeared in more than one of them, arms crossed, confident, captioned with words like visionary and leader. I felt Caleb lean closer to me. We stopped outside the boardroom. Through the glass I could see silhouettes already seated, men in tailored suits, one woman I recognized from filings, papers spread neatly, bottles of water lined up like props. The receptionist hesitated. "They're all here," she said. "It's an unusual meeting." "So is today," I replied. She nodded and opened the door. The room went quiet, not the respectful kind, the startled kind. Grant Keller stood at the head of the table, tall, controlled. His eyes met mine for half a second. That was all it took. Mason was seated to his right. He looked up and laughed, a sharp barking sound, too loud. "Well," he said, leaning back in his chair, "this is unexpected." Tiffany sat beside him, legs crossed, phone already in her hand. Her gaze dropped to Caleb, then slid back to me like something unpleasant she couldn't place. "Field trip?" she asked. "That's cute." No one else laughed. Mason smirked. "What's this, Aaron? You here to finally ask for help? Or did you get lost on the way to the unemployment office?" A few people shifted. No one intervened. Caleb stiffened. I pulled out a chair near the far end of the table, sat down, gestured for Caleb to take the seat beside me. He did. Mason's smile widened. "Wow," he said. "You brought him. That's bold. Or desperate. Hard to tell." Tiffany leaned in, voice sweet. "This room's for big decisions, sweetheart. Might get boring for you." Caleb's fingers dug into the fabric of my sleeve. I didn't look at Mason. I didn't look at Tiffany. I looked straight ahead. Grant cleared his throat. "We'll begin shortly," he said. "Let's wait until the hour." Mason rolled his eyes. "You're always so dramatic, Grant. What's the emergency?" Another compliance lecture. He turned to the others. "Sorry, everyone. Family issues." Family. The words sat wrong in the room. The wall clock ticked. Loud. Deliberate. 9:57. Mason leaned back completely at ease. He checked his watch. Adjusted his cufflinks. 9:58. He glanced at Caleb again. "You know, he said casually, when you grow up, you'll understand. Some people just don't have what it takes. Doesn't mean they didn't try." That was the second humiliation. Not loud, not cruel on the surface, just enough to sink in. Caleb's jaw clenched. His eyes dropped to the table. I felt it then, the old instinct, the one that tells you to explain, to soften, to defend. I ignored it. 9:59. Grant stood. The room straightened with him. "This meeting of the Apex Grid Systems Board is now in session," he said. "Attendance is noted. Quorum is present." Mason blinked. "Just once." "Grant," he said, chuckling. "Relax." Grant didn't. He slid a slim folder onto the table in front of each seat. Black, unmarked, heavy enough to matter. The sound of them landing echoed. Mason frowned. "What is this?" Grant didn't answer him. He turned instead to me. "Ms. Walsh," he said evenly, "thank you for coming in person." Mason's head snapped toward me. "In person," he repeated. I met his eyes for the first time. My voice was calm, unapologetic. I wanted my son to see I said, see what Mason scoffed. I didn't respond. The clock clicked to 10:00. Grant opened his folder. "Agenda item 1, he said. Disclosure of controlling interest." The room shifted. Mason straightened. His smile faded just a fraction. "What the hell is this?" he demanded. Grant didn't look at him. "As of this morning," he continued, "Apex Grid Systems is under new control." Caleb squeezed my hand under the table. I squeezed back. Once. Mason laughed again, but this time it cracked. "Very funny," he said. "Okay, who's playing games?" Grant finally turned to him. "You're about to find out," he said. I watched Mason's face, and for the first time in my life I didn't look away, not when the ground began to shift, not when my son held his breath, and not when my brother realized too late that he wasn't the one holding the room anymore. Grant didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He reached into the slim black folder and turned the first page so the header faced the room. Clean font, legal spacing, no drama, beneficial ownership disclosure, he read. Filed time-stamped and recorded at 6:41 a.m. Mason scoffed, but the sound came out thin. "Grant, you can't just—" Grant kept reading. "As of this morning, 59.8% of Apex Grid Systems voting shares are held by a single entity." He paused. "Northlake Holdings, LLC." The air changed. Not a gasp, not a shout. A subtle tightening, like everyone in the room had leaned back at the same time. Mason blinked. "That's impossible." Grant looked at him then. Really looked at him. "It's not," he said. "It's documented." He tapped the table. Once. A screen at the end of the room flickered on. A cap table filled the wall. Names, percentages, lines converging at the top. Northlake Holdings, highlighted. Mason leaned forward so fast his chair scraped. "That's a shell," he snapped. "Some hedge fund. California money. I know who you don't." Grant cut in. Silence snapped tight. Grant flipped to the next page and slid it across the table toward Mason. Not aggressively, precisely. Escrow confirmations, wire receipts, dates that lined up too cleanly to argue with. Mason stared at the paper. His mouth opened then closed. That money he started, that money saved this company. "Yes," Grant said, "it did." He turned another page. 7 wires, 4 business days, all cleared, all irrevocable. Tiffany leaned in, nails clicking against the table. "This is a joke," she said. "You're letting her—" She gestured at me like I was an object that offended her. "Sit here and embarrass you." Grant didn't look at her. He turned to the room. "Item 2, he said, fiduciary conduct review." Mason shot to his feet. "Absolutely not." Grant raised a hand, calm, authoritative. "Sit down," he said. Mason didn't. "I'm the CEO." Mason barked. "You don't get to ambush me in my own boardroom." Grant's voice didn't change. "You were." That landed. Mason froze. Grant slid one last document onto the table. Thicker, tabbed, color-coded. Under the operating agreement, he continued the controlling interest holder may call for removal of officers for cause. He turned his head slightly. "Ms. Walsh." Every eye snapped to me. I stood. The chair didn't squeak. I'd chosen it carefully. "My brother has been reckless with company funds," I said. "He's concealed material risks from this board, and he's used this company as a shield for his ego." Mason laughed, loud, desperate. "You think you can do this," he said. "You think because you showed up with papers I cut him off? You humiliated my son last night." The words fell flat. No heat, no tremor. The room went dead silent. I took a breath. "You did it casually," I continued. "Publicly. Like it didn't matter. Like he was collateral." Tiffany scoffed. "This isn't about feelings." "It is for me," I said. I looked around the table, met eyes, didn't beg. "I move to remove Mason Walsh from all executive roles," I said. "Effective immediately." Grant nodded once. "All in favor." I raised my hand. One by one, others followed. Not all. "Enough." Grant counted silently. Motion carries. Mason staggered back like he'd been hit. "You can't," he said. "You can't just—" "I can," I replied. I did. Grant didn't give him time to regroup. "Item 3, he said. "Appointment of interim leadership. I nominate Grant Keller," I said. A murmur, then nods. "All in favor." Hands rose again. Mason slammed his palm on the table. "This is insane." Grant closed the folder. "Item 4, he said. "Revocation of access." He pressed a button under the table. The door behind Mason opened quietly. 2 security officers stepped in. Dark suits, earpieces, neutral faces. Tiffany's breath hitched. "What are they doing here?" she hissed. Grant didn't look at her. "Mason Walsh," he said evenly. "You are no longer authorized to be on company property." Mason turned red, then pale. "You're siding with her," he demanded of the board. "After everything I built." An older man near the end of the table finally spoke. His voice was tired. "You didn't build it alone," he said. "You never did. That one broke something." Tiffany stood heels scraping. "Aaron," she said suddenly breathless, "let's not do this. We're family." I stepped back as she reached for me. "Family doesn't punch down," I said, "especially not at a child." She froze. Mason lunged across the table, papers scattered, water spilled. "I'll sue," he shouted. "I'll burn this place down. You hear me?" The security officers moved in. "Sir," one said calmly, "please come with us." Mason jerked away. His jacket tore at the seam. His watch clattered to the floor. "You think you won?" he screamed at me. "You think this ends here?" I watched him struggle. "No," I said. "This is where it starts." They dragged him toward the door. Tiffany followed, shoes abandoned, voice breaking into something animal. The door closed. The sound was final. No echo, no applause, just breath returning to the room. I sat back down. Caleb looked up at me. His eyes were wide but dry, focused. "You didn't yell," he whispered. I squeezed his hand. "You don't have to," I said. "When you're holding the truth." Grant exhaled slowly. "Meeting adjourned," he said. People stood. Quiet congratulations. Avoided eye contact. No one lingered. Within minutes, the boardroom emptied. Just Grant, Caleb, me. Grant allowed himself a small smile. "You okay?" I nodded. Caleb tugged my sleeve. "Can we go now?" I looked at the chair at the head of the table, the one Mason had loved. "Yeah," I said. "We've seen enough." We walked out together. Behind us, Apex Grid Systems exhaled, and somewhere between the elevator doors closing and the weight lifting off my chest, I knew something with a name had finally ended, and something without one had just begun. The fallout didn't explode. It unraveled. That's how these things really end, not with sirens or headlines, but with doors quietly closing and never opening again. By noon, Mason's access badges were dead. Email locked, calendar wiped. His name vanished from internal directories like it had never belonged there. By sunset, the board's filings hit the state registry. By morning, the rumors had legs. People don't ask questions when the paperwork answers them first. Caleb and I went home that day and ordered takeout. Nothing fancy, noodles in paper boxes. We ate on the couch with the TV on mute. A dog show rerun, bright lights, wagging tails, normal. Halfway through, Caleb looked at me and said, "He was really scared." "Yes," I said. He nodded like that mattered, like he needed to file it away. The first call came 3 days later. My mother. I watched her name vibrate on my phone until it stopped, then rang again, then again. On the 4th try, I answered. "Aaron." she said, breath thin. What did you do? I didn't correct her. Mason's staying at a hotel, she continued. Just temporary. He says he can't get anyone to call him back. I waited. She swallowed. He asked if you could help. Just alone. To get steady. I looked at Caleb across the room, sprawled on the floor with his homework chewing the end of his pencil. He glanced up, curious. Not anxious. Curious? No, I said. Silence. I'm not punishing him, I added, calm as stone. I'm stopping. Her voice broke. He's your brother. And that was my son, I replied. You were there. 10 seconds passed. Long ones. I understand, she whispered. She didn't call again. Neither did my father. Mason tried everything else. Lawyers who wouldn't take the meeting. Old friends who suddenly remembered being busy. Messages sent late at night that went unanswered. The company he'd worn like a crown moved on without him faster than anyone expected. Grant kept me updated. Just facts. Just numbers. New leadership stabilized contracts. Vendors relaxed. Employees stopped whispering. Apex Grid Systems changed its name quietly 2 weeks later. No ceremony, no press release, just a new sign installed before dawn. Mason watched it come down. Someone sent me the video, shaky phone footage from across the street. Mason standing there in a wrinkled jacket, hands shoved into his pockets, staring up as the letters were lowered one by one. I didn't forward it. I didn't delete it either. Tiffany left next. Not in a scream or a scene, just a moving truck and a car seat in the back of her SUV. Papers filed, statements released through attorneys. She cited irreconcilable differences and requested primary custody. Mason didn't contest it. He didn't have the energy. Caleb noticed the quiet before I did. Why doesn't Grandma text anymore? He asked one night, brushing his teeth. Sometimes people don't know what to say, I told him. He rinsed and nodded. That's okay. 3 weeks later, his teacher emailed, Career Day, parents invited, short presentations, 10 minutes each. Caleb read the email over my shoulder. Are you going? He asked. If you want me to. He thought for a moment, then smiled. Small. Certain. Yeah, he said. I want them to know. I didn't ask what he meant. The morning of Career Day. I stood in his classroom holding a paper cup of coffee, listening to a firefighter talk about courage and a nurse talk about care. When it was my turn, I didn't mention titles or money or numbers. I talked about responsibility, about decisions made quietly, about protecting what matters even when it costs you comfort. Caleb sat up straighter. After school, he said, they asked if we're rich, and I told them we're safe. That night we sat at the kitchen table with the laptop open between us, the same table where I'd opened the folder weeks earlier, the same chair. The numbers were higher than before. Growth, stability, dividends reinvested automatically. Caleb leaned over my shoulder. Is that a lot? It's enough, I said. He considered that, then crawled into my lap like he used to when he was smaller, resting his head against my chest. I like when you don't yell, he said sleepily. I kissed his hair. Me too. Later, after he was asleep, I stood in the hallway and listened to the house. No dishwasher this time, no ticking clock, just quiet that didn't feel hollow. I didn't win because I was louder. I didn't win because I was cruel. I won because I was prepared, because I stayed when leaving would have been easier, because I kept my hands steady and my mouth shut until the moment mattered. People think power looks like dominance. They're wrong. Power looks like boundaries that don't bend, like a child who sleeps without fear, like knowing when to walk away and when to lock the door behind you. I turned off the light and went to bed. We weren't rich. We were safe, and no one could take that from us again.